Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to have you here. So good to see you. Please say hi in the chat if you can. I know some of you probably can't because you might not be logged in, but it's awesome if you can say hi. And if you already want to start thinking about any questions you might have on the topic, on today's topic, which is communication in relationships, or challenging conversations, or difficult conversations, sensitive topics, whatever you want to call it. If you have any questions about that, you can type them in the chat whenever you like. And let me just introduce myself. My name is Melanie Josephine. I am award-winning author of Love Life Simplified. I also wrote Rock Your Au Pair Year, and I am also a certified life coach. I did my certification with Tony Robbins, and I coach women to transform their love life. But let's jump into the topic. So I've looked into my notes this afternoon and just before the live stream, and actually I took a lot of notes, and I was thinking this might be the one time I don't know if half an hour is enough to talk about this, but I can always do another live stream if I feel there is more to talk about. I took so many notes, and I've only spontaneously decided the structure of this live stream, which is going to be, I think I'm gonna first talk a little bit about the preparation before a conversation, then the conversation itself, and the after. So when you think about that, hi Kira, that's so cool that you've made it again. That's awesome. So yeah, the part about the preparation is probably the biggest part, because well, I usually do it like this. If it's something that, I mean, sometimes things come up, and just to get completely clear on what I'm talking about right now, because maybe you have no idea what I'm actually talking about. And what I'm talking about is like, how do I bring up things that bother me, or how do I bring up conversations that are where I want to say, hey, this and this is important to me in this relationship, but I'm not really sure we're on the same page here. Or like, if you want to change the course in your relationship, if you want to make changes in your relationship, this doesn't necessarily have to be just in a romantic relationship. It can also be in a friendship. Like, whenever there is something that is either bothering you or upsetting you, or anything that is a bit more tricky to talk about than the weather or any of those light topics that you can always talk about, but that are so surface level that you're never really reaching a deep connection. Because when you're truly capable to be vulnerable with somebody, to talk about your feelings, to really bring up any topic, this is when true deep relationships are formed. And sometimes these challenging conversations can be a break or make point where a relationship either falls apart or grows closer together. And this is probably one of the challenges, one of the fears that we have. And then also our brain tends to go to the worst case scenario. We think about all these negative outcomes this should have. I mean, ideally what we probably want is that that we bring forward what we want to say, our partner agrees with us, of course, and we live happily ever after. So my first piece of advice is actually that you should, before you have this conversation, that you do sit back and you do visualize that conversation the way that you want it to go. Because that way you can already see it. I think it was Esther Hicks who said, whatever you are capable of imagining can be true. I think she said it differently, but like, whatever you can imagine can also be true. I mean, you don't know how your partner's going to react, but I've talked about this in the live stream dating anxiety. I said there that like whatever energy you come with has definitely an influence on how things go. And in that live stream, I talked about dating, obviously. But in this scenario, just imagine what difference it would make whether you're coming to your partner or friend from a loving point of view, or whether you're coming from a fear point of view. Now, you can probably imagine that if you're coming from a fear point of view, your body language is completely different, your language is different. You might not even have the confidence to say all the things that you really want to say. You may not bring your point of view across from a place of love because you're not feeling that. So that's my first piece of advice, that you imagine how you want it to go. You really visualize that. I've done that many times and it is so helpful. And you can do it once, you can do it several times, whatever really works for you, and also depending on how important this conversation is for you. And then my second piece of advice is asking yourself how you want to show up. What kind of person do you want to be in this conversation? And then focusing on feeling the feeling of love, so that you can come from a loving place. And I'm already coming to another really amazing piece of advice that I recently heard in the coaching program that I'm in. And I find this so helpful. And it is the question, what is the most loving thing for all parties involved? So in your conversation, maybe the only two people who are involved are you and your partner, but maybe there are other people involved in the topic, like maybe the partner's family or friends or whoever this is relating to. If you can ask yourself the question prior to the conversation, what is the most loving thing for me? What is the most loving thing for my partner? And what's the most loving thing for everybody involved? And yeah, I can just say this is just so helpful. And then you may have heard this before. Language is just so important. And I don't only want to talk about the I language, the I feel like X, Y, and Z, because yes, that's better than accusing your partner. But that's not the only way. I think coming from your heart and going into the conversation from a place where you already feel love, even if the topic is something that originally angered you or upset you, if you're just coming from a place of love, you can just speak differently. You can meet the situation with curiosity. You can ask your partner, well, why did you do that? Or what are your thoughts when you're doing this and this? And sometimes I find the most interesting answers come back because we are not the other person. And usually we're dating somebody who's completely different. So that means they have different thought patterns. They have a different background. And if you're dating somebody who's not your, like, for example, I'm dating a guy, so we're not the same sex, basically. That means that our brain functions differently. And naturally, sometimes, I mean, how often have we thought, oh my gosh, I really don't know what that person has, like, what are they thinking? And we say that in a way of anger, but we should actually come from a place of curiosity. Yes, what are they thinking? Find out what are they thinking. And the thing is, all of us, we are all flawed. Marissa Peer said this really beautifully in one of her videos. She was saying, like, I'm flawed, you're flawed, we're in a relationship with a flawed person, and we always will be. So communication is extremely important, because if you don't communicate well, communication can very, very easily be like the end of your relationship if you're always keeping quiet. If your partner does things that bother you and you're always thinking to yourself, oh, it's not such a big deal, I don't need to say a word, and things are just piling up, or you have like different values, like different things are like of different importance to you, but if you are just constantly keeping things to yourself, shoving things under the carpet, another thing that is very, very easily done is, and actually I've done that so many times, but I'm really, really trying very hard not to do that anymore, to say to ourselves that it's not a good time. Like, tonight's not a good time because they're tired, or tonight's not a good time because they've had a long day at work, or this weekend isn't a good time because blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can always come up with excuses. And I think that when you're living with somebody or when you're around somebody, you have probably more flexibility in terms of when you bring things up. Like, you know your partner really well. You know, okay, this is when he's really relaxed, or this is like, you just know when is a good time to bring things up. And I'm not saying not to use that knowledge, definitely use that knowledge, but especially if you're not living together or in a situation like this, we're about to go into another lockdown, and if you don't see your partner very often, just don't continue to carry what you want to discuss around with you for first days and then weeks and maybe months, because it's just not serving. And the other example I want to tell you about is that last year, I think it was like late summer, I was on the phone with a friend and I was saying to her, you know, I think I want to discuss X, Y, and Z with my mom. But so I asked my friend, do you think I should wait until I go back to Germany? And she said yes. And then we kind of both came to the conclusion that that was a good idea. But here's the problem. By the time I arrived in Germany, I didn't really feel like it was necessary to have any sort of conversation. And I thought, oh, you know what? Probably not really a big deal. We don't need to talk about anything. So we didn't. And I came back here. And guess what? About 3 or 4 weeks later, the topics that were at the back of my mind came back into the front of my mind, and I was like, great, actually, I think we do need to talk about these things. And now I was back here. So obviously, I then and there actually made the decision I wouldn't wait till the next trip to Germany, and I would just eventually do it. But so this came up in January, and we didn't actually have the conversation until March. So that means I procrastinated on having this conversation more than 6 months. And I can definitely not recommend that. And why can I not recommend that? It's because whenever you procrastinate on an important conversation like that, you simply hold space for that topic in your mind. It is on your to-do list, but so it's just taking up energy and space, but it's not doing anything else. You're not getting rid of it because you're not having the conversation, and it is just sucking energy from you. So it's not helping you at all. And once I finally did have that conversation, it was just so freeing and so relieving and just amazing. Now, I must say that conversation also went extremely well. This is another thing I want to talk about. When you prepare, so the way to prepare is you can journal, you can do some research. I mean, it depends what it is that you want to talk about. You can ask somebody who maybe has a relevant opinion, but don't poll people. Don't speak to 10 people and then be completely confused at the end. Really think to yourself, get inspired, who could really have a good input on this. Like I already said, journal about it, maybe make a pro and con list. And then here is a very, very important part. Hold space for however the person is going to react. Because yes, I did say in the beginning, visualize the conversation in the way that you want it to go. And I do think that's very, very powerful. And at the same time, you visualize yourself as how you want to show up in that conversation. However, I do think if you only hold space for the person to react and say the words that you want to hear and react the way that you want them to react, you put a lot of pressure on the conversation. And I'm saying this because I've done it many times in the past, and it's not good. Because if you then have the conversation and they don't react the way that you want them to, you're not really capable of holding that space. But if you've prepared yourself prior, if you're really, really thinking, okay, this is the best outcome, like you can think about all the possible outcomes, all the possible ways that they could react, and then make peace with that. I know that can sometimes take time, and that's sometimes easier said than done. But please mind my words when I say if you only hold space for what you want to hear, not only is that very limiting for yourself and the other person, but it also puts a lot of pressure on the conversation only going one way. And when I say hold space for any outcome, also just generally hold space for whatever they have to say and stay curious during the conversation. Because yes, you can prepare to a certain degree, but then when you're in the conversation, you obviously should be very focused on, well, first of all, on your feeling of love and staying with that feeling of love. What I always do with so-called challenging conversations that could potentially anger, upset, or something like that do with me, I visualize myself staying calm. Whatever they say, I'm going to stay calm, whatever they say. And that's really, really helpful. That's been really, really helpful for me. And that way, because when I'm in a place of love, when I'm in a place of calmness, I interpret things from that place. I hope that makes sense. Because if I'm in a place of fear or anger or upset, I'm going to interpret what the other person says way different than if I'm coming from a place of love. And when I'm coming from a place of love, I can ask very different questions, and I can be way more curious and not, I think when we're upset or angry, it's very, very easy to judge the other person, shutting them down, and then maybe using language that makes them feel like they are pushed into a corner and they have no other way but just defend themselves. Common phrases that make people feel like they just need to defend themselves is if you say, you always do, or you never do, or you just don't care about me, or like making assumptions that are very, very negative and you don't actually even know if they're true. And the person literally, like if somebody came to you and did that to you, you would feel exactly the same way. You would just want to defend yourself. And when you're basically the offensive part, the other person is the defensive part, you're not really having a space where you're truly coming together and connect. Because it is okay to have different opinions. It is okay to think different thoughts, maybe have different lifestyles, have different hobbies. But if you can just really be truly, truly honest with your partner and also bring things up now rather than later, don't let them pile up, then you are building a very, very strong foundation of trust and love and communication and being a team. And that's just very, very powerful. Let me just have a quick look what else I've written down. What have I shared? What have I not shared? Yeah, I wanted to say also, if you feel like the other person should apologize to you for something, whatever it is, you can totally stand up for yourself and ask them for an apology. But you don't tell them to apologize, because even if they did something that you're 100% sure that you're right and they should definitely apologize, and maybe I would even agree and everybody else would agree, but you can't really make anybody do anything. So you can talk to them in a calm way and you can say, hey, I would really appreciate if you were to apologize, but I know this is up to you and I don't expect it. But I just want to say that because sometimes people have done something in the past and we have never brought it up, but it's kind of still in the way. This can also be with a friendship, and this person has never really apologized. Maybe because they weren't aware that they were hurting you, or maybe because some people actually really struggle with apologizing and they think, oh, maybe it's forgotten now, but the other person hasn't forgotten, but they don't know. So if you then come and just give them the space to apologize if they want to, but they don't have to, then that's a really beautiful thing to do. And you are supporting yourself, you're standing up for yourself, and even if they don't apologize, you can praise yourself that you did it. You did it. I think I spoke a little bit, but not actually enough, about that you will just not ever feel like doing this. And I want you to take this as a reason to do it immediately. Ask yourself, like, a lot of times, not just with conversations like this, also with tasks that I don't really feel like doing. Like, for example, it's like whatever time in the day, and I see, oh, I've written down I should do this task, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do it tomorrow or next week. And now I've come into this habit where actually I'm asking myself, well, what's in the way of doing it now? Why shouldn't I do it now? And you should do exactly the same with conversations. Like, do you actually still have a reason not to have this conversation immediately? Have you not done enough research? If you haven't, when are you going to do it? Like, put it in your calendar, hold yourself accountable, build that trust with yourself. Do you want to talk to somebody before you talk to the actual person? Write down, when are you going to do that? Message them now, message them immediately. Like, don't procrastinate like I did 6 months or more. I'm not doing that anymore, by the way, because I've really learned that the feeling of discomfort is only my brain saying I want to avoid pain at all costs, even if I'm not sure if there will be pain. I just want to avoid. This is just our natural tendency. Our brains are all like this. We just want to experience pleasure and we want to avoid pain. But if I did that with the conversation with my mom, even on the day that the conversation was planned, I said to myself, I really don't feel like it. And then that day it didn't happen. But then that night I said to myself, you know what? Ta-da! I'm never gonna feel like doing it. So I just need to get it out of the way and do it, even though I don't feel like doing it. And what's happening then is that you're becoming more powerful than your brain, because you but like, when you're doing this mindfulness work, the self-growth work, you become the master of your brain, not your brain just telling you, oh, you should go and hide in a corner because you're afraid. No, you want to have deep connections with people. You want to live a bigger life. And that means sometimes you just need to step out of your comfort zone and do it. And I think just reminding yourself that the discomfort is going to be the same today, or if I wait for 6 months, the only difference is I'm actually in much more discomfort if I wait, because it keeps coming up. It keeps annoying me. Like, I don't really know if I should or if I shouldn't. I question myself. I doubt myself. That means I'm bringing my self-confidence down. So when you really face these things, you're also bringing your self-confidence up, because whatever you do that you're afraid of doing, I mean, unless it's actually dangerous, I'm not suggesting you should do anything dangerous, but if you're doing things that you want to face, then that is actually growing your self-confidence. So basically, that's another advantage here. The other thing I haven't mentioned yet is that it is very, very good to narrow down what you want to say, like, but very specifically to 2 or 3 topics. Actually, 1 or 2 is better. Like, less is better here because it's sensitive. And if you come with like a list of 10 things and you're like, yeah, so I'm bothered by this and this and this, and it's really annoying, and you shouldn't do this, and blah, 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 blah. 10 things is just way too much. The other person is just going to feel crushed. So really narrow down what's important. And especially if you've been kind of hoarding these things because you haven't brought them up in the moment, then it's kind of like negative thoughts. Negative thoughts attract more negative thoughts. Positive thoughts attract more positive thoughts. And we all know that once we've come to dislike a person, there's just way more and more and more things that we are going to dislike. So therefore, really, really, that's why journaling is so helpful as an exercise for this. Really think about the 2 topics that you can narrow down to, and then bring those to your partner. And if you are saying that actually, but I have 6 and they're all important, then leave them for further conversations. Like, have a conversation now, then maybe have a conversation a couple of weeks or a week later. I know I'm saying that don't procrastinate on these conversations. However, if you've already procrastinated for a very, very long time, then it may be necessary to just have one conversation, wait, have another conversation, because you just don't want to crush that person. Also, always make sure that they actually understand where you're coming from. I know that sounds like super simple, but sometimes it's as easy as saying, hey, do you get where I'm coming from? Do you maybe need another example? Because if they already understood, or if they already knew where you're coming from, you probably wouldn't have needed to have this conversation in the first place. So it's very important, very useful to actually check in and see, do they get it? Maybe it doesn't even mean do they agree, but do they understand where you're coming from, or do they possibly need another example? Also, sometimes it's important, if you have things from your past that you haven't fully processed, asking yourself, am I coming from a reasonable place, or am I just hurt because I'm triggered? And I'm not saying that because you're triggered, that doesn't matter. That obviously matters, but it can be interesting to ask yourself that question, because the person that you are with is obviously not at fault with what you've experienced in your childhood or what you've experienced in previous relationships. So sometimes you might want to check in, do I react why do I react this way, and do I have a good reason here, or have I not fully processed something from my past? And then it's very worth going into that and doing that. I think I've talked a little bit about the choice of words. Just think about how you phrase things. Don't use any swear words or anything like that. Being really honest with yourself and with your partner, I also wrote down. Because it's easy to lie even to ourselves, so that we don't have to have these conversations. But coming from a place of honesty is the first step, and definitely worth being honest with yourself and with your partner. Another thing I wrote down, if you're unsure about how you can bring yourself to a place of love, if you feel just so angry, ask yourself why you love that person. What do you love about that person to bring yourself back to a place of love? So I guess I didn't actually do it the way I said in the beginning. I said that I would talk about the preparation, the conversation, and after. So I did talk about the conversation and the preparation, but the after, I guess it's all kind of in the unknown. So because you don't know how the person reacts. So if you have any other questions, you can also still write questions in the comments below once this video is uploaded, because it will be uploaded. It'll just take till tomorrow morning, the processing. And if you have any last comments, you can obviously message me right now. But otherwise, if you enjoy these live streams, please subscribe to my channel, because there's a live stream every Monday at 7 p.m. UK time. And next Monday, come and join me, because next Monday I'm going to talk about comparison. And I've already done a lot of research. This topic is inspired by one of my beautiful friends. And if you want to inspire me, message me here on YouTube, or message me personally, and I might get inspired. It all depends if I can find enough information. But yeah, I love getting inspiration from you guys, and I want to thank you again for coming on live here with me. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment below with any thoughts or questions, and I'm sending you lots of love. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.